Good evening. Shalom, shalom, and happy Hanukkah. I just wanted to come to you guys and bring you a little brief message on Hanukkah, why we celebrate it, some significant meanings about Hanukkah, and why it's so important for us to understand some of these things. Did you know that Jesus celebrated Hanukkah? Christmas is not in the Bible, but Hanukkah is. And so I want to talk about that for just a few minutes as we get ready to kindle the Hanukkah lights. And so a lot of you guys know that you see Jewish menorahs, or you see the seven branch candlestick, the menorah, all over throughout the year. And you notice that on Hanukkah, we use a nine branch candlestick rather than a seven branch candlestick. So why is this? I'm glad you asked. And so we're going to get into a little bit of history here as we talk about the season of Hanukkah that we're in this year of 5784, which is the year of the pay, the decade of the mouth, what you say you have, and the year of the door, go through your door. And so in Hanukkah, celebrates the Jewish victory over the Greek superpower in the second century BC, and that was during the time of the Second Temple. Um, the Greeks really worked hard to secularize the Jews. They wanted to assimilate them. They abolished key Jewish practices of Torah study and Shabbat and these things under penalty of death. And so a lot of Hellenistic Jews began to assimilate into the Greek culture, and they were really eroding the foundation of Jewish life as they were doing that because they were becoming much more secular and a lot less Jewish, and they were not hanging on to the book and the things that God had called them to do. So in 167 BC, when the Greeks challenged the Jews to sacrifice a pig to the Greek god on the altar in the temple, um, there was an open revolt that was led by Mattathiah, who was the priest at that time, and he pulled out his sword and he killed the guy offering the pig on the altar, and his sons followed suit, and then they killed everybody there, and they led this big revolt. You got to see this, that this is a small band of very zealous Jews who are fighting a guerrilla warfare against the entire Greek army. This is the ruling empire of the day. And not only did they fight, and they didn't expect to win, they didn't expect to survive. But not only did they fight this war, but after 3 years against incredible odds, the Maccabees miraculously defeated the superpower of that time. So Judah was the oldest son of Mattathiah who led this revolt, and they called him the Maccabee or the Hammer. And so they miraculously defeated that entire superpower. And so they recaptured the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. They cleansed it of idols and then rededicated it, excuse me, on the 25th day of the Jewish month of Kislev, which happens in around December. So, wanting to relight the menorah, they searched the entire temple, but they only found one jar of pure oil bearing the seal of the high priest. But that small little jar of oil miraculously burned for 8 straight days until a new supply of oil could be made. And so you don't just, after you do all this cleansing, you don't just light it with any old oil. You have to use this pure special oil, and it takes 8 days to make it. But the interesting thing about it is that when they lit the menorah, they expected it to burn out after a day, and then they were going to have to wait 7 more days to fill it back up with oil and relight it. But it miraculously burned for 8 full days. So that is why we light one candle every single day progressively throughout the entire week of Hanukkah. That's also why Jews eat a lot of fried foods this week, because it celebrates the oil. And so you'll see a lot of people doing things like eating donuts and different kinds of fried foods and latkes and things like that, which are fried potato pancakes. Those are one of my favorites. I don't eat the donuts, but I do eat the potato pancakes. And so during this festival of light, it's a great time of feasting and a great time of celebrating the Lord and celebrating his light. And it's interesting that This is a 9-branched candelabra, and the middle branch, the middle candle, stands taller than the others. The middle candle is the one that is lit first, and you use that middle candle to successively light each other candle. Excuse me. That candle is known as the servant candle or the branch candle. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Jesus came as a servant. Jesus is the branch. All of these things are talked about. He is the light of the world, are talked about in the Bible. And so for 8 days, the servant or the branch candle lights all the other candles of this menorah. Another interesting thing that we do on Hanukkah is we play a little game called the dreidel game. And the dreidel is a little spinning top, and it's got 4 Hebrew letters, one on each side. And so it's interesting because those letters actually stand for their Nes Gadol Haya Shem, which means a great miracle happened there. And it was a great miracle for 8 days, the oil burned. And so during the Feast of Hanukkah, especially during when the Greeks were in charge, remember that if they got caught teaching Torah to the students, they could get put to death. And so Jewish teachers and parents persisted in teaching Torah. But the interesting thing is that the students used to keep this little gambling toy in their pockets. And if the Greek soldiers raided the schools, then the children would take out their little spinning tops and some coins and explain that they were just playing a game. And so it allowed them to continue to study Torah and live secret lives. And so the other interesting thing, though, about the 4 Hebrew letters that are on the dreidel toy is that each letter has a numerical value. So we know in Hebrew, every letter also has a numerical value. The numerical value of the dreidels Nun, Gimel, He, Shin is 358. This is also the numerical value of some key words in Hebrew. It's the same as Nachash. That's the serpent, the snake that tempted Adam and Eve to eat the fruit of the forbidden tree. It's also the numerical value of Mashiach or Messiah, who came to redeem us. Remember, it said that the first promise in the Bible that God gave to Eve was that the seed of the woman, the Mashiach, would crush the head of the serpent, the Nachash. Both of these have identical numerical value. Isn't that interesting? Like I said earlier, Jesus himself celebrated Hanukkah. John 10:22 through 23 says, Then came Hanukkah in Jerusalem, and it was winter, and Yeshua was walking around inside the temple area in Solomon's porch. It is fitting that the light of the world would be in Jerusalem during the Festival of Lights. So I want to pronounce over you guys the Hanukkah blessing and invite you to have a blessed and peaceful Hanukkah season. And please do not forget to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the protection of the soldiers that are fighting Hamas. Pray for the protection and the deliverance of the 138 hostages that are still being held by Hamas. Our God is a great God. If he can cause oil to burn miraculously for 8 days, he can bring forth miraculous deliverances of these hostages on Hanukkah. And he already has done so. He laid on my heart earlier on to pray for a particular family that had been taken hostage. At first, I was just praying for the grandma until I realized that she had a whole family that was taken hostage. So I began to pray for their release. And you know what? On the second day, when Hamas was releasing hostages, which is the 50th day that after the war broke out, 50 is the number of Jubilee. The specific, out of 240 hostages, the specific family that God gave me to pray for was released. Shoshan Haran, And all the female relatives of her family were all released together on the 50th day, the day of Jubilee, the day that slaves are released according to Torah. They were all released. And that was the family out of 240 people that I had been praying for. Wow. Our God is amazing. And so if he can do that, surely he can put an end to this horrific war, protect our soldiers, and set the captives free. So I'm going to release this blessing over all of us for a happy Hanukkah. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to kindle the Hanukkah light. Have a most happy and blessed Hanukkah and holiday season for each and every one of you. Shalom, shalom.